You have strange dreams tonight. A familiar voice beckons you to your window. There are stairs leading into the night sky. You awaken just as you begin to ascend them. You have an urge to look outside your window. Have a look outside. It's beautiful, says the voice from your wall. Hang on, wait, no, don't do it. I got confused. Don't look outside. It's bad. Maybe just a peek. Look Outside is a paradoxically titled game where the only real imperative is that you must not, under any circumstances, look outside. But what is outside? Well, we don't know exactly what, but whatever it is, even the act of perceiving it can change a human, warp them, twist them, drive them to madness. And if our curiosity gets the better of us, we'll go ahead, pull the curtains apart and look outside. Look Outside is a game that wears its references proudly. To those that are fans of Lovecraft, the mythology here will be familiar. There's something out there that is so profoundly terrible to behold it has physical and psychological effects on those that look upon it. This, of course, breaks all laws of physics, nature, and reality, but that reality is the one the characters of this game are forced to contend with. This game sends the player on a downward spiral into insanity, each day encountering fresh horrors and new mind-breaking terrors to rend apart our fragile consciousness. The reason I'm making this video is because I believe it is one of the best Lovecraftian games ever made, and quickly earned its spot as one of my favorite games of all time. Cosmic horror, body horror, and Lovecraftian mythos in general can be tough to convey in media forms that aren't books, but this game effortlessly and excellently combines and portrays this difficult genre in video game format. The ending in particular strikes me as pure art and left me stunned that this little indie RPG Maker game could invoke such powerful emotions. This video is a love letter to the game, but also an outlet for me because I so desperately wanted to talk about it. Now, this video will contain spoilers as I'm talking about most aspects of the game pretty thoroughly. Of course, I absolutely recommend you play this immediately so you can experience it for yourself. I wouldn't want to deprive you of what I consider an extraordinary gaming experience. There's no need to hide my opinion at the end of this video, and this isn't really a review. I think you should buy and play this game. It's amazing. But some people need convincing, and with that said, let's begin. Instead of talking about the game broadly, first I want to show you my first few minutes with the game, going in completely blind. As is shown in the beginning of the video, when you start a new game, you wake up, a strange neighbor, Sybil, that doesn't take privacy very seriously, tells you not to look outside, and that everything will blow over in 15 days. That's all you're given. With zero clues, I begin to explore this apartment. I check my laptop for news. The news warns of weather phenomena, but I think it's a bit more than that judging by the game over screen. Someone knocks at my door. Tense music begins to play as I answer. It's a pizza guy, but I didn't order pizza. The general mood is making me uneasy, so I tell him I didn't order and send him away. I brush my teeth. Hygiene is important, I guess, since I just got +8 from a simple brush. I take a shower, which gives me a whopping 60 hygiene, 10 calm, and 4 morale. I don't know what these mean yet, but they must be good. Sybil isn't around to talk to, so I talk to my plant, and with no other ideas, I decide to venture outside. Time to investigate what's happening. Immediately, the situation looks pretty bad. The lights don't appear to be working in the hallway and there's a trail of blood. I check the plastic plant where I keep the spare keys to my apartment. Missing. Not a good sign. The door to the stairwell is chained and locked, but a trail of blood either leads into or away from it, so I decide to follow it back to one end. Inside the apartment is dark. A TV blurs static in the corner. The trail leads to the bathroom. Along the way, I see a baseball bat. It seems prudent to equip it at this point. Moving inside the bathroom, I see what looks like a man. Let's try to speak with him. Pensive music plays and the screen shifts to a focus view of a wounded but crazed-looking man. I have dialogue options. "Are you hurt?" I ask, already knowing the answer. He is hurt, and he's seen it. tense music begins to pound. A crazy man with a knife is a more immediate problem than whatever is outside. Glad now that I equipped the baseball bat, but sad my diplomacy fell through. I fight. He doesn't fight back, instead turning the knife to himself. He falls to my bat. He drops the key to the stairwell, and if you pry it out of his hand, the knife, a valuable weapon. As I walk away from this gruesome crime scene, the first jump scare of the game, an eye, as if to say, I see what you have done. Did I just kill a man? Was it really self-defense? Returning to the hallway, the world seems even more dangerous than it did mere minutes ago. What looks like shambling zombies now roam the halls. But I just killed a man for some keys, so I should at least use them, right? Apparently the third floor is the top because there's roof access here, and I certainly don't want to go outside, so the only way to head is down. On the second floor, I meet a strange figure in robes. It starts the battle screen, but it's actually just a dialogue. He's happy to find another lucid soul. This man is Aster, an astronomer, and maybe yesterday he would have been the last person I want to talk to, but with the new order of the world, he appears to be a source of wisdom. He reveals crucial lore. He and his associates are attempting to ascertain the true nature of whatever is happening. They've worked out that outside light burns away at living essence, so they wear thick robes for safety. He also claims that the source of the phenomenon outside is some sort of object passing through our solar system. He's not willing to guess it anymore at the moment, but that makes sense with what Sybil said earlier. Maybe the object will leave our solar system in 15 days, it's just passing through? However, he goes on to say that observing this object, even indirectly like a reflection, will change and warp a person. Anyway, right now his order is gathering data, and we can find out more and possibly join if we find Jasper on the ground floor. With the new goal to find Jasper, I find all the floors below us are locked, as well as a gruesome scene here. I decide to wander around more on the second floor and enter an apartment where I find Jean, a person who's having some difficulty walking around. She asks us to retrieve her laundry from the ground floor, another reason to go down. She says there's a way down from Lyle's apartment across from her, but that's locked, so I start exploring my other options down the hall. I'm getting a bad feeling. I found this key, but there's something behind that door. And the hallway seems to stretch forever. I hear the splintering of wood and pounding footsteps. It's on my heels. Oh God, this doesn't even resemble a human. A series of cavernous maws and grinning teeth wants me dead. And that's where this game hooked me. Okay, now that we've seen a bit of this game, let's talk basics. Look Outside is a survival horror RPG built in the RPG Maker engine. The engine means the game inherits some things basically by default. We've got movement that's stuck to a grid, as well as combat that's turn-based, like you might see in old JRPGs. Also, the items, tools, and weapons we find are going to be equipped and used through a menu. It's not like classics in the genre like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, but it's going to carve out its own space nonetheless. There's also a multitude of mechanics to explain. So many, in fact, that I can't really information dump them all here and have a compelling video, so I'll just have to do it on the way when we encounter them. But the core gameplay is this. You play as Sam, a recently unemployed denizen of some generic apartment building during the greatest catastrophe humanity has ever experienced. There's something outside that's changing the world, and you're doing your best to figure out what's going on with very limited tools. You leave your apartment every day to explore a little more of your building, finding clues, talking to those who are still sane, and battling those that are not. Can you find the answers? Can you even survive in this horrific new world? Alright, let's start with saving. So at the beginning of the game, it asks you if you want to play in easy or normal mode. In easy mode, you can save at any time. However, in normal mode, which I highly recommend you play in as the de facto intended experience, You have to earn your save. Saving is done by talking to your neighbor Sybil, that eye on the wall we saw earlier. She'll document your day and talk it out with you. She has tons of unique lines for major events that can happen in the game, but she's only going to be available to talk if you fill this bar at the bottom of the screen. This danger bar can also be thought of as like an adventure bar. When you leave the safety of your apartment and go exploring, it will begin to fill up. Passing time and finding a new area for the first time or encountering dangerous situations will fill the meter up. Filling the meter up to the first mark will allow you to save, so although it does challenge the player, it doesn't cross over into being extremely punishing. If you explore and fill the meter past that, it will give XP bonuses on returning home, and these bonuses can be very large if you fill the meter all the way. XP points or experience points, of course, level up your character, letting you grow stronger because this game is an RPG and it does have RPG leveling mechanics. So this system provides tension for the player because you can't repeatedly save before every major event or difficult encounter, and you have to play in chunks to earn your save. Of course, survival horror games have experimented in the past with how the player saves, but this is typically done by limiting the number of saves by making saves a consumable item that you must find. I like the system and look outside because it feels to me like a refinement of the idea. Instead of knowing in the abstract that somewhere out there is an item for you to save, and you hope you explored in the particular direction that the item happened to be, you know that a certain amount of exploration, or battle, or danger in general will reward you with being able to save, period. In addition to this, there's a time system to this game. Sybil told you this will blow over in 15 days. With nothing better to go on, you're kind of operating under the assumption that this is true. Inside of your apartment are many things to do, which we'll discuss later, that pass time. Time is exploration based. Walking around in areas you've already visited passes no time, but exploring new places and battling will. Now, with this added attention to time, you might think this game is tightly paced like Pikmin or Majora's Mask, but the game is generous, and even in my very first playthrough where I went in completely blind and made every mistake possible, I was still able to complete the game without worrying. Also, we'll talk about this later, but there's an entire ending dedicated to you simply waiting out the game and playing video games in your apartment for 2 weeks straight. There's another interesting distinction this game has that's important, but first I have to explain what I even mean by distinction. Because this game is made in the RPG Maker engine, it's going to intrinsically have similarities to other games made in the engine. I have my personal hangups about RPG Maker, but I have to begrudgingly admit that many of my favorite games only exist because RPG Maker provides tools and framework to make them reality. One of the issues is that it causes a lot of these games to feel very samey, and seasoned gamers like myself will get deja vu for gameplay, and might even be turned off completely because they don't want to spend another 20 hours clicking through the same RPG Maker menus they've seen 100 times before. Being made in the same engine also invites comparison by default, and I anticipate this game being compared to Fear and Hunger, which is probably a fair comparison, and perhaps to Lisa because of the body horror present here, which we haven't even delved into yet. This is all to say that I assure you, as someone who has personal hangups about RPG Maker games, that there is enough here done differently to stand out and make it worth playing despite being just another RPG Maker combat game. So now, one of the really interesting things I like is that for all encounters outside the safety of your apartment, the game switches to a battle screen. You probably noticed that when you fought the crazy man with an eye in his torso, the dialogue was handled in a more intimate screen where we're zoomed in, and he's got a much bigger sprite than the overhead view. When I first played, I thought this was a special encounter, but when we talk to Aster, it does the same thing, even though Aster's friendly. I like this for multiple reasons. First of all, it lets us see bigger sprites of the characters to get more personality and detail, but it also creates tension because in this world of madness, you never know how an encounter is going to go. Terrifying battles and polite conversations start the same way, which adds a tremendous degree of uncertainty. Furthermore, even friendly characters and characters important to the story, every character in the game basically, you can choose to just attack them from this menu. If you want, you can roleplay as a completely deranged lunatic and just kill everyone you see. But having these choices and dialogue options take place in what is traditionally a battle screen by design is just one of those hidden things. You may not have noticed it, but your brain did. If you've ever played a classic JRPG, you know when the screen zooms in, it's a battle. So this tiny little choice, whether intentional by the developers or not, adds so much to the feel of the game. This is a hopeless world where anyone is a potential threat, and that's communicated in the very essence of the game. Now, with the basics out of the way, we're finally ready to delve into the meat of the gameplay. Remember this grinning monster? Well, I actually happened to accidentally beat it. And no, we haven't talked about combat yet, but don't worry, we'll get there. Anyway, I accidentally crit this thing and kill it because I played this on day 1 when there were some hilariously broken things that were yet to be patched. This is a good time to point out that the game is being updated pretty regularly, even as I write and record this video, and some things might be different now whenever you're viewing this, so keep that in mind. Anyway, what was probably supposed to happen in this encounter is you have a tense chase sequence, but end up finding this conveniently placed gun and loaded magazine and duke it out that way. After the beast is defeated, the hallway seems to return to normal, and with the key and new firearms in hand, we unlock the apartment. After we brutally break and enter, the person living here says it's fine that we come in. Well, I say person, but it's hard to use that descriptor. Something has clearly happened to Lyle. Jean, maybe we could excuse, but it's clear that this thing isn't human anymore. But it seems to be sane, conversing with us. Polite, helpful even. Does that mean it's possible to retain your sanity even after you've looked outside? For now, I'll choose to trust Lyle. With all the harrowing encounters I've had today, I return to my apartment for a night's rest. Dreaming of the grinning monster, I awaken to Sybil providing me new information. This will happen from time to time. Sybil will have important information for us to push us in the right direction. She tells me that there is something wandering around outside complaining of tooth pain, and if we go investigate it, to bring the bat. With that grim warning in mind, I step outside, and it's not long before I see what she meant.
The teeth, they're spreading. I need to bite, grow the teeth on you. She was in her crib, out by the window when it happened. I have her smile, her beautiful smile. She bit me on the arm. Now I'm growing her teeth. Her beautiful baby teeth.
And just like that, Clint is slain. This is where the game begins to delve into terrifying body horror. The grinning monster and the man earlier were bad enough, but this is something much worse. From what I can gather from what Clint said, his baby daughter saw it and then bit him. The idea of a rash that takes over your body and grows teeth is absolutely nightmarish to me. I literally shudder at the thought. It also suggests we might not even have to see it to be changed. It sounds like it's possible that it's some sort of contagion. However, repulsed as I am, I'm drawn inside his apartment. There are these horrible creatures. I'm disgusted by them, but also hope in the back of my mind they weren't once human. I find a figure staring in the mirror in the bathroom. Against my better judgment, I talk to him. The music begins to pulse. Oh my god, it's a little boy. He's brushing his teeth. I'm the neighbor.
Hang on, I'm brushing my teeth.
Your sister sick?
Yeah, my sister's sick. She bit me on the nose when I was playing with her.
Oh no, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I didn't even cry. But I caught what she's got, and now brushing my teeth takes forever.
What's happening outside?
I don't know. I think my sister's the only one who looked outside. She can't speak it, so I guess you'll have to wait to ask her. Though at the rate she's growing, she's gonna start talking soon, I bet.
About your mom.
My sister bit her a lot. She's been spending a lot of time in the bedroom. I'm almost done. Just have to reach those teeth that grew in my throat.
About your brother.
As bad as I got it, Ben got it way worse. He got too close and she jumped on him and bit him a lot. He almost died, but he's all better now. He's in our bedroom right now if you want to see him. Well, what's left of him. Every day the brushing routine gets worse. I hope they stop growing soon. I can feel more growing already. Yesterday my mouth grew into my eye, so I lost it. I think the teeth, they're growing in my head. I can't think. I'm scared. Fuzzy.
I hear the cries of a baby in the distance. I'll go find the mother now. And that must be the baby. After fighting the mother, I found a toy army man. With a heavy heart, I looked for the last family member. He said, a brother, right? A grotesquely deformed child is playing with toys. He seems to be rooted to the ground. This child didn't ask for this. I sit down beside him and begin to play with him. He deserves one last experience of childhood bliss. No matter how he looks now, he deserves his last rites. He waves goodbye, but freezes and gets lost in thought again. This time he doesn't come back from that unaware state. He's gone. I should brush my teeth. You look at yourself in the mirror and think about the neighbors, those tooth people. Father Clint, he was the only one you ever really spoke to. He always seemed like an okay guy. He didn't give you much of a choice, did he? Why did you go into the house? Why did you go inside and kill Madison, the mother? You didn't have to go in. The boy, Joel, he let you in. His mind wasn't even gone. He was lucid, kind even. And when you attacked, he called out for Fuzzy. You walked into their house and murdered them. This is what a murderer looks like. It was for the best. Really, it was for the best. They would have hurt you or each other or someone else. They'd lost their minds. It was the humane thing to do. Someone had to do it. It was dirty business, but they were too far gone, like a racehorse with a broken leg. They simply had to be put down. You wish you weren't the one to do it, but you were. Why are you doing this? Cut it out. You shake your head and snap back to reality. You're doing okay. Should you brush your teeth? This is why I love this game. This whole segment hit incredibly hard. The powerful revulsion is what has happened to the Tooth People. The savage brutality of murdering an entire family and the crippling guilt, looking in the mirror and pretending everything is all right. That's why this game is amazing. It puts the player in these horrible situations with serious choices to make. Because guess what? It didn't have to play out that way. I'm going to go into this in more detail later, but Look Outside is an extremely complex game with many different ways for things to play out. But put that aside for now. I find a way into the first floor via Lyle's apartment. I've been warned that something down there has warped the first floor. It's not just an apartment building anymore. Down here, the first thing I spot is some rats, which don't put up much of a fight, and a strange dripping pipe, which of course seems to be leaking blood. Upon examining it, we hear a voice. There's a woman in here. She says she's been changed, but asks for our help to deliver a love letter? She needs stationery and a pen. Keep this in mind for later. Upon entering the first floor properly, you'll find that indeed it is a strange place. It seems to loop infinitely, seeing the same door over and over if you travel horizontally or vertically, but then getting different places each time when you try to mix the two directions. Also, there's something here, something massive. Now, there's something I really love about this game. When you're exploring, things will have a certain sprite, but because these sprites are smaller than the combat ones, readability is limited. Furthermore, a lot of the enemies move around extremely quickly, resulting in these moments where something massive runs at you, and you haven't had enough time to process what it might be, and now you're battling it. Or, as you're exploring the darkness, something scuttles by. You're not sure what, but it was huge and terrifying. Okay, so now it's time to finally talk about combat. You may have figured this out already, but combat is initiated when you bump into enemies that are wandering around the apartment building. It will then take you to the combat screen. Something unique about this game is that enemies will almost always start far away from you, as if this was a real encounter, where an enemy is approaching you from the hallway or wherever you are. This is interesting as most melee moves will miss when they're approaching, so you can use these turns to prepare or make the most out of your ranged weapons. Generally, you have attack, ranged, special, guard, and item. These are fairly self-explanatory. Attack will be your most basic attack. If you have a ranged weapon, you can use that. Special is of course a special abilities, but we'll circle back around to this. You have guard, which will bolster your defenses against attacks during the next turn, and item, which will let you use one of your many items. Combat in this game will be familiar if you've played any JRPG ever. You have health points. When they deplete, you're dead. Stamina, which lets you use your special abilities, and another meter for displaying how much ammo you have loaded into your current ranged weapon. The combat in this game isn't exceptional, but it is very hard. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to die over and over again, because Sam isn't really meant to be alone. Until now, I've been solo, but once you hit the first floor, it's going to be really challenging without company. Is it possible to complete the game alone? Yes, if you know exactly what you're doing. Let's look at this battle. When the massive shape catches me, I'm stuck in a battle with the Rat King. A terrible circumstance to be in. Watch how as it gets closer, it gets a brand new sprite accompanied by a musical sting to let us know just how screwed we are. Sometimes enemies will even have a third sprite for being even closer. So combine that with the overworld sprite and you've got potentially 4 different extremely detailed sprites for every enemy. This is an astounding amount of work, but it serves to elevate this game even more from your standard RPG Maker combat, at least visually. Now, it's time to die to the Rat King because I'm hopelessly unprepared alone. So, what are we to do? Well, it's time to play some video games. In a mechanic that's not explained anywhere as far as I can tell, if you choose to pass time by any means in your apartment, cooking, watching TV, playing video games, etc., there's a chance that someone might knock on your door. Now, for players that are immersed in the game, or just playing cautiously, you could be forgiven for not answering the door. When you look through the peephole, basically everyone looks scary. But these encounters are almost 90% positive. Extremely positive if you get this psycho to knock on your door. Meet Helen. If you're lucky, this Jason wannabe will knock on your door looking for a place to crash. Don't worry, even though she towers over every other character in the game and wears an intimidating mask, she's a softie at heart. So, these random encounters will provide opportunities for you to recruit people to your party. And furthermore, playing video games to completion will give you additional skills. What if you just happen to never pass time in the apartment like I did? Since I spent all my time exploring and getting my ass kicked, this didn't happen to me organically. Well, let's start over fresh. Remember that grinning monstrosity that bent reality and chased me down a stretched out version of the second floor? Well, if you defeat it in battle, then walk back to the door it broke out of, you'll meet Lei. She is the grinning monstrosity. And yes, she is crazy, but for now she'll tag along. And the Tooth Boy, that didn't sit right with me. If you explore into the children's bedroom and pick up his stuffed bear, when the teeth overcome him, you can actually use the teddy bear from your item screen and throw it at him. Upon seeing it, he'll calm down. After you dispatch his parents, you can choose to tell him he can't stay here, not all alone. The Teeth Boy may look horrific, but he's completely sane. And for the sake of my sanity, I will leave no child behind. If you take Joel to Benjamin, he'll give you helpful hints on how to best play with his dying brother, resulting in the best possible outcome where you give the poor creature his true last rites. He'll reward you with unique items before passing. Joel may not understand, but he does know. Well, now that we've got a party, the game will be significantly more manageable, right? Well, yes and no, because up until this point I haven't talked about the weapons. There are a few different types of damage, with each enemy having certain weaknesses and strengths. Knowing these weaknesses can make combat a cinch, or incredibly deadly if you don't have the correct weapon equipped. So, having a party where you can vary your weapons will make you flexible, right? Well, not quite that easy. Joel can't carry a weapon because he's a child, but furthermore, weapons break. They can break during combat by chance, or when using power moves, they break with a higher probability. Once they're broken, they can still be used at a heavily reduced effectiveness, but if they break again in this state, they're gone. You're trapped in this apartment building. Every weapon is a precious resource. If a knife chips and shatters, that's a huge blow to your battle effectiveness, and each party member equipping another weapon is adding to the chance of you blowing through your armory. Luckily, basically every item you pick up around the apartment can be thrown for different damage types. Every fork, knife, and plate can be a weapon in a pinch. These, of course, are also limited. Furthermore, managing the health of an entire party is much more difficult than just Sam. At your apartment, you can cook. Every fridge in every apartment you raid will give you ingredients. These ingredients can be combined in a primitive crafting system for different meals. With just Sam, you'll eat the meal and have leftovers, which will restore your health. This is how I was making it through the day when I just had Sam. However, with every additional mouth to feed, your food supply burns up faster and faster, and there are no leftovers. The same goes for your very limited healing items, bandages, antidotes, bombs, tonics. All of these factors lead to interesting decisions for the players and gives an enormous amount to manage. You have to balance a rapidly shrinking pool of weapons, food, and items while balancing the health of a party and managing the exploration and saving system. Ultimately, I think having a party is much better, but I struggle a lot to keep them healthy, leading me to explore more aggressively to find more items, and of course, getting caught in difficult situations, and as a result, wiping out. Now that we've got a real party, it's back to the first floor. We can defeat the Rat King and he drops a strange item. Let's equip it. By the way, for those uninitiated, in almost every RPG you can use equipment to raise your various stats, and this game is no different. We have a few different slots for our gear to go in. However, the crown the Rat King drops is different. It actually allows us to speak to rats, and we can learn from the dialogue that the rats appear to have once been human as well. Or maybe being exposed to it has implanted human-like memories? It's not really clear, but wearing this allows us to have a much easier time on this floor. There's a lot of wandering around here to do, and there's a lot to see. most importantly, we find another one of the astronomers, Aurelius, and he again provides us with crucial lore. The 4 astronomers were founded by another member who became aware of the visitor months earlier. The visitor is what they call the object outside. The 4 astronomers were founded by another member who became aware of the thing outside months earlier, allowing the 4 to be prepared because of this knowledge. However, the founding member is no longer around. Importantly, each of the astronomers is attempting to gather indirect observations of the visitor so they can carefully study it. Aurelius is looking for a terrible painting hidden away in the dark, the knowledge of which came to him in a vision. In fact, each of the 4 astronomers you meet has a vision of some observation of the visitor. It's up to Sam whether he wants to help find these or not. In addition to that, each of these observations is hidden behind a puzzle which can be failed. Actually, these can be failed spectacularly, but we'll get to that later. For now, he tells us if we somehow find the terrible painting, not to look at it, but to take it to Jasper on the ground floor. Right now, we don't have a way of getting into the ground floor. We can see that the entrance seems to require 2 discs as some sort of key, and with more wandering, we can eventually find another gigantic rat who, if we speak too nicely, will just let us have what he's guarding, which is actually one of these discs. The Mars disc. In a darker corner of the first floor, we step into a room full of rats and the heart-wrenching cries of a baby. In the back room, abandoned in the crib, swaddled in blankets, is the source of the crying. I rush over to see this. I can take it with me, kill it, or simply leave it to its fate. Now, if you didn't kill the Rat King, you might not even know the rats appear to have sentient thoughts, but with that cursed knowledge, I cannot leave this child. However, even if you choose to take it, Sam hesitates and will leave. But then the rat will skitter into our backpack, apparently having taken a liking to us. Eventually, on the first floor, you'll wander around enough to find apartment 13. The room is completely bare, save for a nightmarish face that is apparently part of the wall. Is this the building made manifest? When trying to speak with it, it will simply say, "Feed me a child." You'll have the prompt to feed it the rat baby or leave. I certainly won't be feeding this child, however deformed it may be, so I leave. But I can't. This hallway will go on forever. You'll have to make a choice at this point. You can simply feed him the rat child. It's a horrible, mutated, wretched creature, but it did not ask to be made like this. I will not feed him, but the wall demands sacrifice. You can try to feed it all your food, but it will not accept. Then, you can suggest your arm. This will permanently affect the rest of your playthrough. You can choose the right or left arm, permanently taking away your ability to use either melee or ranged weapons and 2-handed weapons entirely. But for the sake of my sanity, I choose my right arm. When you wake up, you find the rat baby curled up next to you. It seems to somehow know. After your sacrifice, the mouth will spit out the earth disc, the other half of the puzzle, to reach the ground floor. Let's return to the apartment after a long day. Now, in your apartment, all the party members you've recruited thus far will be wandering around. The rat baby will now join the rest of the gang. You can interact with them, but perhaps more interestingly, they can interact with each other. The most common interactions seem to be around the dinner table after cooking and eating a meal. Sometimes the friends in your apartment will interact with you or have conversations with each other. There are a lot of these, and even after beating the game 5 or 6 times, I haven't recruited all the party members, and I'm always finding more of these interactions. They're not limited to your apartment either. If you have certain party members during events, they might chime in. This adds an enormous amount of personality to the game because you're not only motivated to find party members to learn more about them, but different combinations of party members. When we talk about the variety of ways to end quests later, combined with the randomness of who might be tagging along for Sam's journey, there are probably not 2 people who've experienced this game in exactly the same way, which makes it an extremely compelling game to replay and get a slightly different flavor, or, like I did earlier, to fix a mistake you made and do better this time. Anyway, if you interact with the rat baby, you can take care of him, importantly naming him. I firmly believe his canon name is Sam Jr., but if you take care of him properly, by cleaning him, feeding him, and playing with him, he can actually join your party. There are a lot of interactions from the other characters of this part of the game, and I actually make my ultimate judgment on whether I like a character based on how they treat Sam Jr. Helen and Joel are very gentle with him, so from now on, as far as I'm concerned, the canon party is Sam, Joel, Helen, and the rat baby. Sadly, the rat baby is basically a wasted slot, and is generally a pretty terrible party member, and virtually anyone else would be a better swap, but I like to roleplay in this game. Another strong roleplay option is to pick the third child. Sophie is running around in the apartment by herself looking for her mother, and she's a great example of human resilience. Once you recruit her, you can talk to her, and she has one of the best lines in the game. I don't want to be optimistic, but I don't think we're going to have school on Monday. Role-playing Sam as an adoptive father of these children seems fitting, but you could also argue it's irresponsible to have children at all, and you should have a party of all adults. In which case, it would probably be something like Sam, Lay, Helen, and Papineau for the absolute hardest-hitting easy mode team. Anyway, depending on how fast you've been progressing, new apartments will open up each day on the 3rd floor. One day, you'll find the words "Help You" spray painted in blue outside the apartment next door. Inside, you'll hear the noise of something moving around, but nothing is visible. We'll be back here later. The next day, there's a taxidermied creature. If your morbid curiosity gets the better of you, inside you'll find yourself face to face with the most bizarre mishmash of creatures. This is one of the most surreal locations in the apartment building. Strange, liminal, checkerboarded areas filled with creatures made out of taxidermy tools. Are all of these mutated humans? If, for some reason, you pick up the shrunken head and then place it in this door, it will open like some sort of flesh zipper, letting you into a world of skin. Wall to wall, ceiling to ceiling, flesh stretched against the features of an apartment in some twisted way. This cannot be real, but this is the reality you wake up to every day. Are you slipping deeper into madness? Let's speak in broad terms about the enemies and look outside. They are incredibly varied, and there's probably close to 100 standard enemies, and an enormous amount of extra difficult boss encounters. Again, when I first started the game and saw those first zombie-like enemies called observers, I assumed that everything that witnessed it, the visitor or whatever, was going to look like that, and they were sort of going to be the standard enemy. But you'll never see those again. In fact, there's hardly a repeated enemy type in the entire game. There will be similar types that are clustered together based on the environment, but even then, there'll be small variations. And the environments themselves are surprisingly varied. For a game that takes place in a single apartment building, the game stretches the concept to its absolute limit. Because of the strange effects of the visitor, anything can happen. You have the world of skin from the taxidermy apartment. You can visit a frozen land where the enemies are almost cute. There's a plant/jungle biome on the 1st floor, a vast network of sewers where the enemies are horrible mixes of pipes and flesh. You never know what you're going to encounter, and the building becomes almost a character of its own. The shifting geometry of the building defies logic and refuses to make itself easy to navigate. Each floor you descend taking you deeper into madness and closer to hell. It's such an excellent choice for a game to take place entirely inside of an apartment building, and one that shows prescient restraint from the developers. It provides logical limitations but still allows creativity to flourish by using the building in interesting ways, forcing the player to take obtuse and nonsensical paths to progress, but then opening up shortcuts. It just feels so right. Anyway, now with the Earth and Mars disk, we can bypass the locks to the ground floor. Finally, we're able to ask Jasper about the situation to get some answers. We're also finally able to get the laundry for Jean, though we have to fight a worm for it, so check that off the list. But right as we come into the main entrance of the building, a flaming bus crashes in, spilling horribly mutated hand creatures everywhere. I guess this bus was just driving around when the visitor came into orbit? But it's been several days, so I don't know. These enemies are challenging, but by now we've got a relatively seasoned group that can deal with combat. On the other side of the bus, there's a cafe, full of mutated people that are going about their daily lives. Apparently, for some people, the visitor brings only physical changes, and they remain completely sane. However, they speak as if they've been doing their daily routine as a monster for years, when it's been days at most. It's unclear if this is simply a case of false memories, an unreliable narrator, or if there's truly some time dilation at play. These creatures, as monstrous as they appear, are all friendly and can even provide you with powerful items in exchange for money. Surprisingly, the concept of money still exists even in the apocalypse, and there's even a completely sane man named Eugene who has set up a trading post on the 2nd floor, who's happy to scavenge pistol rounds and bandages and what have you and sell them to you at a premium. We finally find Jasper, who will give us our most complete picture of the situation thus far. It is the belief of the astronomer that the visitor is a being, one that can potentially be communicated with. They believe that it responds to observations of itself, and have an idea for a ritual passed down by the founder of their organization. They believe that by presenting 4 observations to the visitor, it will understand that we're sentient beings, I guess, and that we may be able to understand and be understood. If you press him and ask him why you should bother helping him, he gives an honest answer. The worst has basically already happened. Once the visitor leaves, humanity will essentially have been destroyed for nothing if we're not able to communicate with it or understand something. So, essentially, there's what may be reasonably described as a god in orbit. If we perhaps show it that we understand it's existent with depictions of it, we may yet be saved. So now, at this point, it's up to you what you'd like to do. Most of the endings of this game involve helping the astronomers with this quest. It does seem like somewhat of a last resort, but it's more or less the position humanity is in. There's an incomprehensible being in the sky. Might as well give this ritual a shot, right? Now, we have to track down 4 depictions, so let's start with Aster. He had a vision of light dripping from a tube. Well, remember that apartment with "Help You" spray painted outside? Exploring around, the party will hear unexplainable sounds. If you enter a room, shortly after, the door will move by itself. Is there something here? Anyway, inside the apartment we find a telescope projecting an image onto the ground, just like Aster's vision. If we use one of these blank discs, we can imprint the negative image on that, but to do that we need to turn off the lights, which, if you couldn't figure it out, this creature will spell it out for you. I believe this mass of telescopes and eyes is what's left of Edwin, one of the friends of the astronomers. The strange thing is, even though he seems to be intent on genuinely helping you, he seems to go berserk when you turn the lights off. In one of my saves I killed him, and later, when saving, Sybil will remark that he didn't seem mindless. And another one of my saves I just avoided combat with him entirely, but as far as I can tell, there's no way to interact with him beyond this. However, much of this game is a mystery. There's so many ways quests and interactions can be changed or failed. It's possible I just haven't tried what works yet. Either way, we're not done yet. We have a negative image on a disc, but we'll need photo paper. Luckily, Lyle exists. This strange creature from the second floor has a bit of an obsession with photography, and Sam. He'll trade you some photo paper for a kiss, or just a photo, whatever you prefer. We take this photo paper to the neighbor on the third floor. This guy Vincent has a projector that conveniently fits the discs, so we put the disc in and expose the photo paper to the projection. Also, while we're here, we'll rescue the guinea pig. No one else is going to care for it, so we might as well. After all this, we can get Lyle to develop it, which again, he'll do for a kiss. I'm not sure what to make of Lyle. If you open your eyes during this kiss, you'll see his true form, a frightening mechanical beast. If you choose to fight him, he's actually one of the toughest things in the game and has a strange mechanic where he steals your soul with a photo. Upon defeating him, you can access his dark room, which he won't let you in if he's alive. And in here, he's got Sam's spare key. So it's hard to say if Lyle is harmless or devious, but once you've got the developed photo, you have one of the offerings. Next, we have Aurelius from the first floor. He saw a painting in a vision, and wouldn't you know it, there's a painter on the first floor named Frederick. Well, actually, there's a lot of him. He tells us he was painting the sky when the visitor came, and ever since then the things he paints comes to life, and he painted a lot of self-portraits, I guess. There's now 9 of him running around, and he wants you to kill all these painted versions to quiet the cacophony of voices in his head. Except for when you encounter these, they all think they're the original and want you to do the same thing. Now, this is where I first became impressed with the splintering options for how to proceed. As far as I can tell, there's a different scenario and a different potential reward for listening to any one of these 9, although I've only tried a few scenarios. The Fredericks range from affable to outright evil, from angelic to extremely helpful, or downright sad. This Frederick is called Tumor Fred and appears to be constantly regenerating and growing into grotesque shapes. It can barely communicate with you with single-syllable answers, but it lets you know it wants to die. As to which Fred is real, well, none of them are. Locked behind a door in the back, you find a faceless Fred. The first one you encounter is a face stealer, and you can return it to the original, at which point he'll ask you to do the same thing as the others. However, you can outright refuse, and he'll admit that some of the other Freds have character, and maybe you shouldn't just kill them. Now, somewhere in the studio is the painting, but we can't look at it without dying, or something worse, so how do we figure out which one it is? Well, it's quite a clever puzzle, I think, and I actually won't spoil it, but once we've wrapped it up in a canvas bag, we've got the piece of art we need. And speaking of art, I think it's time to call attention to the amazing sprite work of the game. Even though I think the concept of the game is great, I seriously doubt it would work without the amazing execution of the art and just the art direction in general. The body horror works incredibly well, and a lot of the characters are just downright revolting. I have visceral responses to a lot of the things in this game, which kind of surprised me. But I've come to believe that 2D art can perhaps be even more effective than a 3D model. The tone and setting of the game is conveyed so well, especially with the moody color palette. There's also some special treats at the end that we haven't even got to. So with our respect given to the art department, for the third and the fourth offering, we're going to have to go to the basement. And our one clue for that is that the landlord living on the ground floor has the basement key. So sometime after the bus crashes, this apartment opens and we can go in to find Mr. Henderson, our landlord, fending off attackers. He appears to be an old vet that's still got some moxie, but he gets infected nonetheless. Suddenly, his entire apartment becomes a Vietnam flashback, and this place is massive. The first time I played, I got stuck here for hours, wandering the labyrinth of this landlord's personal hell. The strange thing is that the NPCs here that come from the bus crash talk about being enlisted and going through training as if it's been years. but they broke down his door mere minutes ago. It's another confusing element of what appears to be a time dilation. I'm not sure why we all experience what appears to be a very personal psychological deconstruction of Mr. Henderson with him. Perhaps extremely robust personalities react differently to the effects of the visitor? As we explore this apartment/war zone, we find some personal items of his, and he appears to be a highly decorated soldier. I'm not sure what to make of this section, but it actually introduces a lot of mechanics that seem to go nowhere. I'm uncertain if this is intentionally satirical, but it certainly had me scratching my head. Once we have the basement key, we can begin the long trek through the sewer area. There's an extremely challenging optional boss here that's almost like fighting the building itself. For now, we're just passing through, and we find yet another friendly monster encampment. This is probably a good place to mention that although the game has incredible horror, it also has its own sense of humor, and it's not afraid to be funny. The characters here are all humorous, and again, talk as if a great deal of time has passed. If we head south from here, there's a mycelium forest, and there's poor people trapped in fungi. We can even rescue Philippe, a talking moth, which isn't really strange at this point, and he wants us to help rescue his friends further in. Progressing more, we find this guy who wants to duel us in the equivalent of Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I haven't found a single card yet. I can't believe this game has a trading card game inside. I'm at like the 20th hour and it's still introducing more mechanics. Then we find a smith who will make super weapons for us, and he's going to set up camp in our apartment. Cool, that's going to help. And then a builder. Turns out there's a ton of upgrades we can make for our apartment, like expanding so we have more room for party members or upgrading the kitchen so food is more effective. But I don't have any of the materials needed, so I guess we got to keep exploring. Then we get to the princess Philippe was talking about, except it's just a murderous mushroom. Philippe is nothing more than an elegant trap. None of this is real. There is no blacksmith, there are no construction materials, and there is no Yu-Gi-Oh! It was all a psilocybin-induced hallucination. You are going insane. There really is no point to this segment. It almost taunts the player. You thought there would be a reward, didn't you? Insanity is its own reward. Now we move on to the deepest part of the apartment complex, the parking garage. The people or creatures here are something truly terrifying. They have been warped to almost comical proportions. Entire police cars come alive, and finally, you're swallowed up by Hell Ride. This is a desperately timed fight that has multiple sections. You try to bash your way out because somehow you are certain this is taking you straight to hell. If you're too slow in this fight, instant game over in the worst way possible. Finally, after battling our way out of hell, we find the elevator which we can finally use and travel to find Aurelius' offering. A writer who saw the visitor was transformed, ironically, into a giant typewriter, but in his last lucid moments, he wrote down a depiction of the visitor. For the final offering, you'll need to backtrack and find Beryl, the fourth astronomer in the basement. If you've been exploring thoroughly, you'll have most, if not all, of the planetary discs, and you'll need to solve a puzzle involving them to get into the security room. But since there are security cameras pointed outside, we know we have a live feed of the visitor. Of course, we can't look directly at it because look at what happened to the last thing it did. Also, we don't know which camera, so we have to solve this with a rather brute force solution. Remember the guinea pig? Well, put her on the chair and flip through the cameras until it mutates, and then you'll know for sure which feed to record the VHS to. Now, if that seems like kind of a stretch, you're not alone. There are a multitude of different ways to fail all of these quests, and it's likely in a blind playthrough you'll fail at least one. Don't feel bad. A lot of stuff in this game is complicated. For instance, remember that lady in the pipe that wanted you to deliver a love letter? Well, if you track down both the stationery and pen and get the letter from her, you'll find Nestor, the object of her affection, in a restroom on the ground floor. If you give him the letter here without encouraging him, he'll reject it and the quest has failed. And as far as I know, he has no further interactions and neither does the pipe lady. But if when giving them letter, you encourage him that it's completely safe and nothing bad can happen, then return to the pipe, you'll be treated with this gruesome scene. Then you'll have a battle, but he'll split into a bunch of wormy parts that flee. I haven't been able to one-shot these in the first turn yet, so I'm not sure if you can stop this from happening. But then you can chase each of the parts through the building. If you chase the head, he runs up to the second floor where he horrifically attaches himself to the shop trader. If you pursue dialogue options here, you'll reveal that Eugene is still alive and constantly screaming in agony, which doesn't seem to bother whatever Nestor is now. If you push it even further, Nestor will jump to you, resulting in an instant game over. So as far as I can tell, this quest has no positive outcomes whatsoever, except that Nestor gives you the custom handgun that Eugene had. Is that worth the sanity cost of ruining both Nestor and Eugene's life? It seems like the only winning move is not to play. There's also stuff here that I can't seem to figure out no matter what I try, like attempting to communicate with Edwin the telescope monster. But there's also stuff here that seemingly has no purpose. If you choose to waste time in your apartment by doing crosswords over and over, you can eventually uncover a secret code that does nothing. And I've found no use for the Saturn disc thus far. This is an intentionally obtuse and secretive game. Remember the danger bar? How when it fills up, you're rewarded with more XP? Well, there seems to be another hidden mechanic that when you reach the upper limit of the bar, nightmare shadow creatures begin to appear that make sounds like someone mumbling backwards. And these things are way too tough to fight. Then, this thing starts appearing, which I thought was linked to the danger meter, but it seems to be just random. I assumed it was hostile, but there's actually a complicated quest where you can befriend this masked shadow. I say befriend because it seems to mistake your interactions and then comes to your bedroom at night to invite you into its cloak, where it unmakes you by unraveling you into human spaghetti, but somehow also putting you in eternal and everlasting agony. But if you do the exact correct sequence of actions for all of its interactions, it'll become friendly and give you items. And remember how showering and brushing your teeth gives you hygiene, calm, social? None of those values are ever displayed to the player, and it's not clear if they have any real gameplay ramifications. If your invisible hygiene stat drops low enough, the game will tell you that you are now smelly, and the enemies will detect you quicker, but it's hard to test if it even makes a difference. As for the other stats, Sam does seem to have special lines he'll say, but it's unclear to me that they do anything beyond that. Because of the complex nature of the game, you'll always be doubting the information you receive. The experience you have decoding and making sense of this game in some way parallels the struggle of Sam to make sense of this new world. This is a mysterious and obtuse game, and that's actually a compliment. If you haven't played the game, I recommend you don't use a guide, you don't read a wiki, and you operate on pure vibes. I'm still having fun with the game on my 5th playthrough, discovering new stuff each time. But now it's time to complete the ritual. With all offerings in hand, we go to Jasper. Upon receiving the items, he'll give you your very own protective robes and tell you to meet the astronomers on the roof. It's time. Sam unlocks the roof access and stands on the precipice. He takes a deep breath, knowing there's no going back after this. And... it is beautiful. Those who saw weren't lying. Tendrils of the earth stretch up to reach the sky, begging to become one. Bizarre creatures fly, silhouetted against an incredible otherworldly color out of space. And the music. The music perfectly conveys beholding a truly incomprehensibly beautiful sight. Let's finally talk about the music. And at this point, you've probably heard a great deal. I think Look Outside has one of the best OSTs in years. Basically, every track is incredible and sets the tone perfectly for each scene. The basic battle music is perfect. When you try to fight an extremely challenging enemy, the music will change to indicate how much of a threat this is. The tense music it plays when confronting Joel. The cheery but bizarre music for Eugene the Traitor that descends into madness when consumed by the parasitic Nestor. The comfy music of your apartment that makes it feel like a safe place to return to. It's all perfect. But some of the best tracks in the game are here at the end, so let's finally talk about the endings. There are a lot of endings for this game. Like I said earlier, you can do none of this, and you can just wait the 15-day period out and get this ending. But let's say you deliver all the items for the ritual, but you made a mistake with one or more. The astronomers will reveal their offering, and if it wasn't correct, the protection of the ritual will fail, and they'll mutate into a horrible monster. Then, with however many astronomers you have, they'll attempt to offer up the depictions of the visitor. The visitor will then emerge from the clouds, and they'll be twisted into one shape, a chorus of minds. Upon defeating this thing, you'll be granted this ending. Okay, but what if the ritual goes perfectly? What happens then? Well, if all 4 astronomers have their perfect offering, they still combine into the Chaos Quartet. But this time, when beating them, they ascend into the Exalted 4. Then you get this amazing moment. You have a huge list of questions to ask, but only time for a few. What would you do? What would you ask? How would you make sense of all this? If you had only one moment to try to justify what humanity has gone through, what would you try to learn? This creates such a transient moment, and it's an incredible and immersive way to finish off the game. We can ask precious few questions and find out the visitor is simply a blind man feeling in the dark, wishing to observe us, communicate. If we choose to listen to the Exalted 4 and run away, they extinguish roughly 90% of humanity. And just like the previous ending we saw, Sybil gets taken. But by what? The visitor, I think. Throughout the game, you can piece together that Sybil was the founding member of the Astronomers and was the first person to perceive the visitor. In fact, that act of perceiving is probably what awoke it, and upon being looked at, it decided to look back. However, there are some confusing bits. The Sybil of the Astronomers did not live in the apartment next to you, and Jasper implies she completely lost her sanity. But when talking to you, she seems lucid, although clearly changed in some significant way and missing some memories. I think this ending implies the visitor takes her away, as perhaps she's special, being the first to observe it. Okay, but what if we ignore the Exalted Four's warning and simply try to kill them anyway? Can we kill a god? Yes. And then we ascend and face an extraordinarily massive eye. And we can have a direct dialogue with the visitor. The visitor attempts to understand our offerings, our observations, but in a bizarre turn of events, the visitor is only newly self-aware. It was completely unaware that it was hurting humanity, or even the concept that it was separate from what it was observing. It's sorry to have done this, a new feeling for it. It understands that by observing, it destroys, and so it agrees to leave, but promises to think about us for a long time. But before that, it asks, "Do you want to see me?" From here, we have two different endings. Let's decline the offer from the visitor. Unfortunately, Sam has observed the visitor in perhaps the most direct way anyone ever has, and it has truly changed him. He has become a colossal creature with an unbelievable size, but somehow, beating all odds, his sanity remains miraculously intact. With Sam's new form but human mind, he becomes a benevolent super being that grows to encompass the entire Earth, helping rebuild humanity and bring a new age of peace. But what if we accept the offer of the visitor to really see it? The visitor plants a vivid image in your mind. You feel vertigo as a sense of sheer scale overtakes you. Your mind, for a moment, feels the immensity of this body. It seems there was a slight misunderstanding regarding what it meant to truly see his form. This is no mere image. You feel this. You are given a glimpse of the visitor's proprioception, its own subjective experience of itself, of its own body. This was a mistake, a big mistake. The image shifts, the scale grows, there is more. Your mind shifts in response, absorbing the information. There is too much. You were already overwhelmed before, the image has grown 100-fold. Your mind frays at the edges. The image shifts again, the scale grows, there is more. Parts of your brain are wiped clean, your understanding of language, your perception of time, devoured by the ever-expanding idea that was planted there. The image shifts again, the scale grows, there is more. Most of your brain has been repurposed to experience it. Your mind still drinks, it cannot stop no matter how full. The image shifts again, the scale grows, there is more. The visitor's image screams in your ears, fills your nose, blinds your eyes. Every nerve of your body feels it. The image shifts again, the scale grows, there is more. Every engram melts at the visitor's revelation. Synapses form and reform to accommodate the overwhelming knowledge. Less than 1/100th of a second has passed. Your brain cells implode, their molecules reforming into something new and unfathomable. The true death toll can never be known, but nearly all of humanity is wiped out in just a few months. The visitor left behind a terrible beast. its countless limbs tipped with sucking mouths devour people by the dozens. With every victim devoured, the beast grows larger, their bodies assimilated, limbs lined with teeth. Within a few years, it has spread its immense form over the entire world. Its titanic body curls around every city, uprooting trees, toppling buildings. There are signs it may be intelligent, and some have tried communicating with it, to disastrous results. Soon, its maws become as common as trees. No one is safe. It will find you and eat you, repurpose you. The creature has the entire world in its grasp. It chokes the life from civilization, and soon it is all gone. The few survivors hiding in caves and ruins are snatched away one by one. The world would never recover. And the creature, it feels nothing. Its mind is blank. Well, I hope you've enjoyed Look Outside as much as I have. There are many more endings, including one where the guinea pig becomes the vengeful gods in Amon. For me, I like the ending where we see the visitor the best. I think it fully explores the themes of cosmic horror in a way that has maybe never been done before. Go buy and enjoy this game. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching.